Named for the water of Ha'o, an ancient spring nearby. This is the place near the center of royal activity in downtown Honolulu. Is it haunted? Most definitely. On this episode of Hawaii's Most Haunted, we bring to you Kawaiaha'o.
Beyond the cool waters and trade winds of our idealistic paradise is the thin veil which separates our world from the place where the shadows talk back. Welcome to Hawaii's Most Haunted.
According to Ethel M. Damon in 1927, Kawaiaha'o Spring was a familiar spot in marshy ground near the corner of our present King and South Streets. The children at the mission and many others loved to play there, and always spoke of it as the ponds.
It is said that an old chief named Ha'o first opened the spring in ancient times, and it was named after him, Kawaiaha'o, the water of Ha'o. In olden times, a sacred pohaku was set at the mouth of the spring to raise the water level. Where water flowed over the stone, only chiefs bathed or quenched their thirst. In the pool below, commoners were able to drink of Kawaiaha'o. Eventually, the area surrounding the spring became known as Kawaiaha'o by Hawaiians.
The church built near the water of Ha'o Spring in 1842 was, at first, referred to by missionaries and the congregation as the King's Chapel, or the Native Chapel, and later the Stone Church. It was not until 1863 that it finally became known officially and generally as Kawaiaha'o. In 1871, a policeman stationed in the neighborhood of Kawaiaha'o Church heard noises inside the building around 2 o'clock in the morning. Thinking he was going to bag some lawbreakers, he approached and listened. The man believed that he heard what appeared to be a conclave, a meeting of departed spirits of the chiefs, debating upon the affairs of the nation, and distinguished plainly among the voices that of a late prominent member of the House of Nobles. In the year 1900, a Hawaiian soldier on guard duty at the edge of Kawaiaha'o Church Cemetery screamed wildly for the corporal of the guard. The corporal responded at a full run, assuming the worst, thinking all sorts of bad things, but when he saw the guard with his knees trembling and fear depicted in his every molecule, the man told him that he'd seen a ghost rise up from and sink back down into one of the graves 5 times in a quick succession. "Why don't you arrest him?" demanded the corporal. The soldier could only answer with a wide-open mouth and a blank stare. He pleaded to be relieved at once, as he was sure there was a ghost in the cemetery. He was relieved. To his relief, I'm sure. In 1906, the ghost of a young woman was reported by some Japanese townsfolk living near a big empty house close to Kawaiaha'o Church. The ghost seemed to appear and disappear, and from time to time talk about a treasure beneath or about the house. The matter of appearance has been the subject of considerable discussion among the Japanese in the vicinity, and some of them have reported the house as haunted. No one, however, has been able to locate any treasure. The house in question was said to have been one of the oldest in the islands. It was a 2-story structure behind Kawaiaha'o Church, and, in 1906, had been unoccupied for some time. Many years before, it was quite a center of business activity, and was a notable building in the city. It was occupied at one time by a former editor of the Independent, who is, however, not thought to have left any spirits or treasure in the place when he vacated it. Then in 1907, the cook of the R.P. Riffet and some others talked about seeing ghosts in an old house that stands somewhat back from the village street near Kawaiaha'o Church on King Street. The cook said he chased a ghost one night, and when he thought he had a hold of it, there was nothing there. In the dark, he said, the ghost could plainly be seen, but whenever an electric car passed, the spooks suddenly became invisible.
William Charles Lunalilo was born January 31st, 1835, in a 2-story house made of coral brick in an area known as Pohukaina, now part of the grounds of the Iolani Palace. He was the 6th monarch of the Kingdom of Hawaii, born to High Chiefess Miriam Auhea Kekoluohi and his father, High Chief Charles Kanaina, A cousin to Kamehameha V, Kamehameha IV, and Kamamalu, he was of royal descent and a grandnephew of King Kamehameha I. Educated at the royal school by American missionaries, he was fluent in both English and Hawaiian, and was proclaimed eligible for the throne by King Kamehameha III. Lunalilo was betrothed to Princess Kamamalu, and there were 2 attempts of marriage between the two. However, her brothers Kamehameha IV and Kamehameha V refused to allow the marriage, for had the pair wed, their children would outrank the house of Kamehameha. In 1865, the mausoleum at Mauna Ala was completed, and the remains of Hawaii's past monarchs were transferred in a solemn ceremony from the burial vault at Pohukaina to Mauna Ala. However, Lunalilo took offense that the remains of his mother, Kekauluohi, were left behind. Feeling slighted at the reigning king, Lunalilo had his mother's remains interred in a secret location out at sea. It is said that this is the likely reason that Lunalilo requested to be buried at Kawaiaha'o instead of Mauna Ala. When the last of the Kamehameha kings, King Kamehameha V, died in 1872, he had not named a successor. Under the 1864 Constitution, if a successor was not appointed, the legislature was to elect a new king from the eligible Hawaiian royals. The 2 eligible at the time were Kalakaua and Lunalilo. Many people believe that because Lunalilo was more closely related to Kamehameha V, and Bernice Pauahi Bishop made it clear that she did not want the throne, Lunalilo rightly belonged in the seat. Lunalilo insisted that the Constitution be followed and requested a vote. An unofficial popular election was held, and Lunalilo won by an overwhelming majority. A week later, the legislature unanimously voted Lunalilo king on January 8, 1873. Sadly, King Lunalilo's reign was only 1 year and 25 days, and he died from tuberculosis on February 3, 1874, at the age of 39. On his deathbed, he requested to be entombed among his people, rather than with the kings and chiefs. Lunalilo's initial funeral included a 21-gun salute, and his body lay instated at Mauna Ala until the completion of his tomb on the grounds of Kawaiaha'o. On November 23, 1875, his remains were taken from Mauna Ala to Kawaiaha'o. A second funeral was held, and Lunalilo's father, Kanaina, requested another 21-gun salute. But Kalakaua, who was the new king, refused. However, during the procession from Nu'uanu Valley to downtown Honolulu, eyewitness reports stated that a sudden storm arose, and 21 thunderclaps were heard across Honolulu. Thus, what the king denied, the heavens approved. It was also reported in the Pacific Commercial Advertiser that on the same day, in the channel between Oahu and Kauai, several large and perfect waterspouts were seen. Old Hawaiians will tell you that often Aumakua marched in processions, sometimes coming to meet and take away a descendant. These days, people have claimed to witness the old king sitting on the steps of his tomb, smoking a rope cigar, the faint smell of smoke wafting towards the gates on the breeze.